Welcome back to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Lewa. I'm really excited about my next guest today. She's an actor, author, entrepreneur, and so much more. Her early career found her in commercials with athletic greats such as Yao Ming and Yogi Berra, which actually aired during the Super Bowl. And after that, she took on several roles in Law & Order SVU, The Following, Person of Interest, Elementary, and a recurring role on Showtime's show called Dexter, which is one of my personal favorites. And actually, they were nominated for a Best Ensemble Cast. So she's very, very talented. And many of you know her from her starring role as Eva Benitez in the hit movie Freedom Riders with Hillary Swank. She's spoken, nationally and globally with a range of ages and audiences. She's spoke at places like Harvard University. She's even did a TED Talk. And she released her second book, a memoir entitled Embracing Me, a heartfelt, transparent, and witty memoir that explores her story of being a survivor of intimate partner violence. She currently lives in New York City with her husband and her two beautiful daughters. And they own a production company called Lion Chaser Media Incorporated, which I'm super excited to learn more. Welcome, April Hernandez Castillo.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you for all your patience with this whole process with the technology. But I'm super excited again just to share that, April and I had a chance to meet earlier this year. And I was just moved and inspired by her story. Obviously, she's done great work that I've enjoyed on stage and screen. But I'm just excited to kind of get into your story. So why don't we start here? If you could share with folks a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a born and raised New Yorker in the Bronx specifically. So what we as we refer to Boogie Down Bronx. I grew up during the 80s, during the time where the crack epidemic and the whole war on drugs was very prominent. And so growing up in the streets of New York City at that time, it either made you or broke you. And I was blessed to not only just have parents who did their best to invest in me, invest in my education. But although I had the best community, we grew up in a time where community was huge, and I never felt as if I didn't have enough. I just never felt that. I never really felt the danger, if that makes any sense, the way that I feel now. Yeah. That I am like, oh, yeah, we're not taking the train. We're not doing this. Just because I guess as an adult, you become more aware. But New York City at that time, as dangerous as it was, as intense as it was, once again, hip hop was birthed. There was culture, there was music, there was family. And I had the best childhood growing up. So that's my childhood in like 60 seconds.
Yeah. It's funny. I think it might have been Gwendolyn Brooks or another poet who talked about the child who's holding hands with their parents and swinging and having a good time never has a concept of being poor, right? Parents work hard, especially working class parents, to give their children all that they have. And that distance between that and adulthood of just being total bliss when you're surrounded by love, which is pretty incredible.
Right.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. The Boogie Down Bronx. I love, you did some work with some documentary, I guess, tracking of 50 years of hip hop. Mm-hmm. And I know we didn't discuss this earlier, but what was that process like?
So my husband and I, we have our media company, Lion Chaser Media. And so when we first started our company, so this was many, many years ago, we had a friend he's a legendary photographer, Joe Conzo Jr., and he was coined by the New York Times as the man who took hip hop's baby pictures. So he captured hip hop at its essence of, we didn't really know it was hip hop. We just knew that something amazing was happening. And in his words, he's always like, April, we didn't know it was hip hop. It was supposed to be, it wasn't supposed to last. That's what he said. Yes. And now, 50 years later, it's global. It's $1 billion industry. So many people have been able to change their lives because of hip hop. And so to see that and be able to tell this man's story. So we're currently working on it now, and shooting a documentary is a labor of love. It's a lot of work, but what better way? And I always said, who's going to tell our stories other than us? For so many years, no one told his story. Now his story has been told 1,000 times because of who he is and his family background. But I'm talking about documentary style. This is our baby. So hopefully within like the next 2 years, we're finally finished with it.
That's exciting. I look forward to seeing it.
Born in the Bronx. That's the name of it.
Born in the Bronx. All right. Well, we'll look out for that for sure. So I'm curious about your career in acting. It's funny, when I was introducing you some months back, kind of tongue-in-cheek said this is the actual star of Freedom Riders. I mean, it's a movie that you're the centerpiece, regardless of how people look at it. At least that's how I look at it.
Right.
And so I'm curious about kind of that path acting. What made you kind of find your way into that world? Commercials, TV shows, and eventually movies.
Well, I have to take it back. Like when I was a teenager, my brother came home from college, and that's when we watched VHS. Yes, that's how old I am. And on it said Mambo Mouth. And my brother was like, you need to watch this. There's some guy named John Leguizamo, and he's doing these one-man shows. And it's that moment when you hear actors say, that's when I knew I wanted to do that. And so I popped in the tape, and I was completely in awe of seeing someone who resembled me, who sounded like me, who had the same cultural background, in the sense of being Latino. And I thought, wow, I'd love to do this one day. But like, I didn't share it because I wasn't surrounded by art. I wasn't surrounded by theater, although Latinos are some of the funniest, most charismatic people you ever meet. So everybody's pretty funny in a Latino home. But that's not something that you brought up. My dad, he worked for the transit system. My mom was a financial aid counselor for a little bit. And it was really, you go to college, you get a job, and then that's it. Right.
Yeah.
And you hopefully make it out the Bronx. So that seed was planted. And then I went to Hunter College originally to become a nutritionist because I played sports. I was an athlete. And then I walked into the chemistry class and I was like, oh, hell no. What we are not going to do is, go into science. And I just knew, I was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. And so I needed an elective. And so I went to my counselor and I was like, I don't know what to do. And she said, I want to do something fun. I didn't have the best college experience for me. It wasn't what I expected it to be. And there were definitely different factors going on. But when I discovered the acting class, I always say acting found me, and the rest is history.
Oh, that's great.
So I started theater. I did everything that all actors do. You do theater, you just hustle. And back then, there was no internet, so you couldn't create a YouTube channel. You had to hit the pavement running. And I was able to get an agent, and I did the Yao Ming commercial. That's the first time when I finally became a SAG member, and I got paid, and I was like, oh, wow. Who the hell wants to work for free? Absolutely not. Not me, not I. And I just started working right away. I started booking TV shows, Law and Order being my first guest starring role, which I actually worked with Chadwick.
Oh, you did?
I did, which is wild.
Yeah.
When he passed away, it just broke my heart because I remember him just being very quiet man, just very focused. And to see who he became from the role that we did on Law and Order, it was powerful. So, and then Freedom Riders.
Yeah. Yeah, you've had a chance to work with some amazing people. I'm curious, I've never stepped into the realm of acting. And how do you land a gig at a commercial as big as the one that you did that aired on the Super Bowl? Or even like Law and Order SVU is one of my favorite series of all time. And I'm kind of curious, like, what's that person out here in the world who's never been in that world? What does that hustle look like to get in that position? Well,
once again, we're talking about a different time. So when you actually had to go and show up into rooms, I think when a job is for you, it's for you. I think when the stars align, nothing else can pretty much get in the way. And I had no idea what I was doing in the audition room. They just said, you're going to have to say the word yo. And I was like, say yo every day. Like, like, yo, really? How can you not say that word if you're in New York? It's either B or yo. Like, Yo, B, like everything goes together. And it was just the stars aligned, and it was just perfect. It was amazing working with Yao Ming. I had no idea who he was. Absolutely. They were like, this is really tall, just Chinese guys. And I was like, okay, how tall can he be? 7'6".
The tallest.
I was like, oh, so that reaction when people see it, it's so honest to me, of like looking up and as he's towering over me, it was hilarious. It really was. Cause I was like, I am from like his hip down. That's my body. That was his bottom half. And then working with Yogi Berra, of course, you know, me being a Yankee fan, it was amazing.
Yeah. You know, I love what you said about the stars aligning, and when a job is for you, it's for you. I feel like there are a lot of things that I do personally and professionally where you try to make something happen, right? You're trying to will something to happen, and it doesn't always go in the way that you want to, or maybe in the time that you want to.
Right.
I'm kind of curious from you about your philosophy on what keeps you moving, what keeps you hustling. We definitely are going to talk about your company here in a minute, but that started early on for you here. And so how did you find yourself with that philosophy of knowing that what's for you is you, and maybe any other philosophies you have?
I don't know. I think I definitely know growing up in New York City, when you're surrounded by, garbage and drugs and seeing crack vials everywhere, buildings just broken and down, and there is a consciousness that you have of like, there has to be more. And so I have a story where I lived. I was walking through one of the neighborhoods, and there were, how do I keep this clean? There was a parade of dog poop.
Okay.
I'm trying to be as animated for your listeners. It was just a parade of, dog poop. And I remember I had this feeling of like, this cannot be my life. Yeah. And I was a child, and I just thought there has to be more. And one of the questions that I would always ask myself was, why not me? Why not me? Because I'm, brown and I have curly hair and I have an accent, but like, why can't I have what I see on TV, right? Why can't I have what someone who is not brown or black have, that same opportunity? And so I just always had that thing of like, I want to be great, and maybe that was my parents telling me that I can be whatever I wanted to be. I can, although they never went after their dreams. Yeah. Right. I think parents, sometimes we do the best that we can, and we create this life for our children, even if we've never been able to attain it, because we know, damn it, if we couldn't have it, at least let me give them a chance. So I think it was just that mindset that my mom was like, don't let anybody ever like take your voice away. Just, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And so I really like took that as a child. And so that's why whenever I'm working with parents, and if I'm doing, facilitating, I tell parents all the time, I go, you have no idea, your words are the most powerful words in a child's life.
Yes.
Other than their friends. And then when they get into middle school, high school, we sort of lose that influence. So you have about a good 10 years of seed dropping.
Yes. And
I feel like that's what parenting is. It's seed dropping. It's harvesting, right? We're gardeners. Some seeds will they'll harvest when they're supposed to. Some take longer. Some fall to the side, right? It's very biblical. But my parents dropped that seed. And so for me, that's where I am. I have not reached my capacity of greatness yet at all. Yeah. I think I've seen sparks of it. So that's what keeps me going.
Oh, I love it.
And what does that really look like, though, right? Because somebody from the outside looking in, it's perspective.
Yeah, from the outside, you did it.
Right. Like you have a marriage that's successful. Like I've been with my husband for 22 years. I have 2 beautiful children. I have a daughter who's very successful at the age of 10, all of these things. But for me internally, as just an individual, as April, I am nowhere near where I see myself.
To quote you,
but I've come a long way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you can acknowledge that you've come a long way, but to quote you, there has to be more. Like that's that internal drive right there of there has to be more. And I think we were, again, we were talking about, being growing up poor and knowing that, or growing up working class and being able to see something different and somehow internalizing it and saying, for me, there has to be more, right? Regardless of this parade of dog poop or anything else that we're dealing with.
Your listeners will be able to just like picture, I guess I'm an actor and I'm like, how do I colorfully like take them there, because as a child, when you see that, it does affect you. Yes. It does affect how you think, how you see yourself, how you behave. For me, one of my, triggers is seeing an empty fridge. Like everybody has like their thing that triggers them. And seeing an empty fridge for me is like close to like death. Because I just remember when I was a kid and opening up the fridge and like there was always a quarter of milk, a little bit of juice, enough to just get by. We never starved, but we came very close to being hungry, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm like, as long as my fridge is full, we're okay. Yes. We're going to be okay. Yes. There's food in there. My dad, he opens my fridge. He's like, you have so much food. And in my head, like, yes, I was traumatized because you didn't, and bless my dad, right? Like my father was abandoned at the age of 13 by both of his parents. So having to grow up by himself in the streets of the South Bronx at that time, he's done okay. He's done better than okay. Yes. He could have repeated the cycle, but he didn't. So it makes me feel good when he's like, your fridge is always, full. To me, that has so much meaning.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, both your parents are working parents and they did exactly what you're talking about, right? They planted little seeds and some took when they needed to and some may kick in later. And I know for you as a parent, you do the same thing with your kids. You're doing the same thing, which is amazing. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about your company. And so if you can tell us a little bit more about Lion Chaser Media and the work that you're doing there.
Absolutely. Lion Chaser Media. Well, we started as Lion Chaser Films and we came up with this in 2010 after my father-in-law passed away. It was one of those moments where my husband was working in corporate America and they didn't honor his grieving. And I remember him coming home completely depleted and just crying. And I was like, this can't be it. And because God is always good and always on time, I ended up booking Dexter. Mm-hmm. And I said, I have an opportunity for us to move and I want you to quit. And I want you to just go out to LA with me and just mourn in the sunshine of California. Yeah. And for me to be able to take care of my husband in that way, in his grieving, I had to sublet an apartment and we kept our apartment in New York City. And I was able to afford that for the both of us. And I know not a lot of men would feel comfortable with that, but my husband was like, I will have dinner ready for you. I will support you. But he was always a creative. And that's when he picked up the camera. We had a Mac computer and my husband is self-taught. But Lion Chaser Films, there's a backstory to Lion Chaser. So there's a phenomenal book called In a Pit on a Snowy Day with a Lion. And it is written by Pastor Mark Batterson. And it's based off of a little verse in the Bible about this gentleman called Benaiah. And Benaiah was part of David's soldiers. And in the verse, it says he went into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And he created this entire book and this whole mentality of being a lion chaser. So that's how it was inspired. We were inspired by that so much of like, wow, what if we chased our lions? And what is that lion for you in your life? We all have lions that we have to face. And a normal person runs away, right? If you tell me there's a lion right here, I'm running. The mentality of if I can look at my lion and face it and kill it and conquer it, I can do anything I put my mind to. And so we recently rebranded Line Chaser Media. And so now we create assets for companies. We create media assets, content, we docuseries, photography. And it's our way of really taking ownership and telling the stories that we want to tell.
Yeah, that's great. I get an advantage over the listeners. I get to hear you real time and get inspired, and I know other folks will too.
Right.
But just what's resonating for me right now personally, if the job's for you, it's for you. And just based on a lot of things right now with my career and kind of thinking about what's next, but then also this idea of facing your lions, because I think a lot of us do freeze or we do run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we have the power in us to defeat those lions, if we just turn around and we face them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what an incredible chance for you and your husband, especially the pause that you were able to do to be able to pivot in that direction and create this media company. And so I'm super excited. I've seen some of your work, of course, already. You know, I follow you on social medias. And so I got a chance to see the great work that you all are doing with a wide variety of companies, which is incredible.
Right.
And I'm super excited to see that more. I want to also mention this because it needs to be said. In the introduction, I talked about your public speaking, and I've had a chance to have you as a keynote speaker for an international conference, and where we got to know each other. And I know that you're still doing that, right?
Yes.
You're still yes. Okay. I mean, I would love for you just to tell folks about that. Because I know you cover a range of topics,
right.
And it'd be great for them to know about your ability to come to their groups, their corporations, organizations.
Right. It wasn't until I shot Freedom Writers where I understood the power of story. New Yorkers are some of the best storytellers, right? We have stories, our ability to be animated and so passionate. But when you really understand impact, when you really understand that someone else is suffering just like you are, in your story, when you can look at it with a sense of purpose and saying, if I can just help one person, because I can't save anyone. That's why Jesus is here. I'm not Jesus, but I am a vessel. And so I didn't understand that concept until, not even during the film. It wasn't until after where I realized, oh my goodness, I survived something. So being a survivor of intimate partner violence, I was in an abusive relationship from the age of 16 to about 19 and a half. And it got to the point where I thought he would end my life, and then I wanted to end my own. And then I ended up becoming pregnant and having an unfortunately unwanted pregnancy, and I had an abortion. So there were so many things that I experienced at a very young age. I never saw myself as a victim. I never identified, because we didn't have that language back then, right? We didn't even have access to all of the websites, all of the organizations, because there weren't that many back then. So I'm talking about 1999. You were either in a shelter or that was basically it, especially in New York. So I had that mindset of, oh, you didn't kill me? Now watch me. So I use it as fuel. And I said, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be on TV. I literally just used it as ammunition. And it took me from the time that I left him until I was 22 years old, where I saw everything I said happen. So I was on TV. I was in magazines. I was in GQ magazine because of the Yao Ming. So it was this ability to just use it. But then when I did Freedom Writers, I thought, wow, I have a lot of trauma I've never dealt with. And if you are a superintendent, if you are a teacher, you're dealing with kids now who have severe mental health issues, especially because of this pandemic that did not help our babies. And so when you're showing Freedom Writers or you're having people speak, it's there to spark the audiences. And so that sparked my speaking career. I didn't know about speakers. I didn't know you can have a career. I just knew I have something to say. I know I'm not the only one who suffered. And if I can bring to light and bring someone some hope, then that is my duty. And so I've been doing that for over a decade.
Absolutely. And you're so dynamic. You're so funny.
Thank you.
You can talk about intense and difficult things, but you can also connect people and bring people into the light with levity and humor as well. And I think that's a wonderful thing about when you engage and see a great speaker like you is because of the stories you tell, you take us through an emotional roller coaster of different feelings. And it's very, very powerful. And I'm grateful that I've had a chance to witness it. And I know that other folks are going to continue to witness your power in there and through Lion Chaser as well as anything else you actually decide to do, to be honest.
Thank you. I mean, it's not easy, right? When you're talking about abuse or whatever. Can you imagine if I just started out like that? Like I would have nowhere to go, nowhere to take you guys, and I would never be asked to come back. But it's been, when I think that's also life, right? That we can literally cry and laugh simultaneously. So that is how I approach it on stage. We're going to laugh because that's life. And we're going to probably cry. And then we're going to go a little deep. And then I'm going to hopefully bring you up because that's life be lifing. Mm-hmm. Life be life. Lately, I'm like, that is my saying. Life be lifing.
Life be lifing.
Life be lifing. Y'all can take that if you want. It's okay. You can just quote me. So why not do the same thing? I feel like, when someone hires me to speak, I'm there to do the job and to do it well. And I think the performer in me is, if I don't leave my sweat, my soul on stage, then I haven't served the people.
That's right.
I don't have time to be looking, to faking the funk. That's not the kind of speaker I am. I'm pretty transparent. If I'm not that speaker for you, that's okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, I'm a witness. I'm a witness. And I remember sitting there with the lines of people there just to get a chance to meet you and to let you know the impact that you had and the side conversations of how you resonated with your audiences for varying reasons,
right?
In our time together in New York. And so here's what I get, which is a disadvantage to our audiences. You meet check in every once in a while. So I get these pump ups. I get these stories. We get to really encourage each other.
I'm like, yo, Josh. Josh.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, it's good to have friends like you in my life. So we're going to just take a real brief pause and then we're going to get into the big question. All right, April, as you know, the show is the Best Worst Thing podcast. And so, of course, our guests share a personal or professional story, and it's the what, how, what. So, what was the situation that was a setback, personally or professionally? How did you get through it? And what were the lessons you've taken along the way that others probably will want to take away as well? And so, I know we've talked about this, and I'm kind of curious. We may have plenty of best, worst things, but I'm curious for you, April. Today, what do you want to share with us? What is your best, worst thing?
That's so deep. I have so many of them, but I think the first thing that popped into my mind, automatically. So I didn't get to mention this. I started my career as a stand-up comedian. So I was a dancer, and I did dancing. I danced for quite some time, and then I wanted to do stand-up. Right, my dream was to be on SNL. I still hold on to that dream. I feel like it can still happen one day. I just need to be a guest. It's fine. That's all. But so I did stand-up comedy, and I was having a set, and it was my worst moment as a comedian because I forgot every joke. Now, before that, I was killing it. My ability to improv is something that has always been a strength for me. And I remember I had a whole bunch of my friends there, and they were just staring at me. And I was like, I didn't have hot flashes back then, but I definitely felt like I was burning up. I really did. I was like, I must be on fire right now. Why is the light not going off? So you had either a 3 to 5 minute, that's all you had. And it was the longest 5 minutes ever. And so I finished and I ran out. And I remember running down the block, and my boyfriend, who's now my husband, he ran after me and he was like, "What? You have people in there." And I thought how embarrassed I am, and I never got back on the stage in the sense of doing stand-up.
Yes.
So what is the lesson, right? You will bomb. You will bomb in an interview. You will bomb in a relationship. You will bomb sometimes as a parent. You will bomb. It's life. The whole point is that you get back up on stage. So I may not have gone on stage in the capacity of doing stand-up, but I feel like I've redeemed myself because I do use my stand-up. I do use humor. But that was the greatest lesson that I wish I had someone to be like, suck it up. Welcome to life. You're going to bomb. You get back on stage and you grab the mic. And this is all a metaphor. And like that thing never leaves you the first time you bomb, you know, whether that's divorce, whether that's sickness, where you're just like, I don't have the capacity or courage to get back on stage because the stage is just too much. But you have to redeem yourself. So that is the best and worst moment that I carry with me every day.
Yeah, we've got to know each other for a while. And I never knew that about you. I never knew that you did stand up. I know that's, when you listen to stand-ups talk about their work, it's one of the hardest forms of performance, and to have an audience of your friends and to freeze. I mean, I would have ran away and not turned back. I would never. So
I didn't go back. I didn't go in the room. I was like, I told my boyfriend, I was like, you need to go in there. You need to tell them to like come out, because I just, I just couldn't face them. And I wish I had another comic to be like, get over yourself.
Yes.
Like, welcome to failing. I didn't understand that was a huge growth moment for me. Had I had the capacity or the mentor to be like, you're going to bomb 50 more times.
Yes.
But every time you bomb, you're going to get better. You're going to have a callus. You're going to be able to withstand that pain. You're going to be able to withstand all of those feelings of being humiliated. You're going to face it. And so I had to face that lion many years later. So for me, I redeem myself every time I'm on stage. I do my best to like always bring comedy, because it's just secretly nobody knows that like, man, I bombed and I never went back. So this is my time to like, revive that. I would like to do comedy again, and this time like get a coach and like work on it's just I have to just get out my head and the fear of like, okay, so if you bomb, so what? What are you going to do? Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you bomb. It's only you. Right? Yes. We make the bomb bigger than what it is.
You're right.
And if your friends don't think you're funny, okay, fine. You probably weren't funny. You probably actually sucked. Like how many times I've done keynotes and I'm like, oh Lord, wow. What? Where was I going? But keynotes are a bit different. You get to like, you can figure it out. But if you have 5 minutes, like 5 minutes, you have to be precise. So that's my lesson.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Obviously, I'm moved by it. I'm going to connect with something you said earlier. Life be lifing, you will bomb, and ultimately get back up on the stage, and bomb again, and you will get better. And I think that, I can make the analogy and connection with so many different areas of my life, both personally and professionally. And I think you're right. You're the biggest critic. So in my head, like I'll beat myself up over, a one-time decision or choice or series of choices or an interaction that I had. And no, that's, like you said, you're welcome. Welcome to life. This is a thing. Now get out there and do it again.
Right.
Right. And I think that that's so hard in the moment, but we have to find a way to get back after it. So thank you so much. Our conversations for some reason seem always to be right on time for me. The good thing about this one being recorded is that other folks will get a chance to listen to it and get what they need from it as much. I hope they get as much, or at least close to as much as what I've gotten from you over the last several months, almost a year, and now over this conversation. All right, so April, where can people find you on socials or websites? What's the best way for people to keep up with you?
Sure, my website is aprilhernandezspeaks.com. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, it is April L. Hernandez. And LinkedIn, it's April Hernandez Castillo. I have way too many names. need to change them. I'm going to change my Instagram today. Yeah, I think that's the best place. If anyone is, interested in having me speak, obviously the website is the best place, or LinkedIn, which is the professional connection. And so I'm just grateful. Thank you. I hope whoever hears this today, if they felt like they have bombed in their life, that they can redeem themselves and grab that mic, whatever that mic is for you, and get back on stage. Don't let a heartbreak hinder you from finding love and loving yourself. Don't let sickness, sickness is one of those things that really makes you just be like, would I go for it? Right? Because tomorrow really is not promised. And the way that this world is going, just get back on stage.
Thank you so much.